Edril, its transparent walls reflecting the light of 3 distant suns. Inside the main assembly hall, hundreds of alien delegates gathered for what they believed would be another routine first contact ceremony. The air hummed with nervous excitement, as creatures from across the galaxy prepared to welcome yet another peaceful species into their ancient alliance. Ambassador Veltari of the Seleni stood at the ceremonial podium, her silver robes flowing like liquid mercury around her tall, graceful form. Her species had evolved from gazelle-like creatures on a world where survival meant constant vigilance. Her large dark eyes could detect the slightest movement, while her elongated ears could pick up sounds across vast distances. These gifts had kept her ancestors alive on a planet where predators ruled the day and night. She glanced around the Great Hall, noting the familiar faces of the Galactic Council. The Fenari delegates sat in their traditional meditation poses, their rabbit-like ears constantly swiveling to catch every sound. Their homeworld had been a place of endless grasslands, where only the fastest and most alert survived the hunting. Packs. The Althari representatives stood in their characteristic nervous clusters, their deer-like features alert and ready to bolt at the first sign of danger. Even the bird-descended Cathara kept their feathers slightly raised, a sign of their species' perpetual readiness to take flight. All of them shared the same evolutionary heritage. They were the descendants of prey animals, creatures who had survived countless millennia by perfecting the arts of hiding, running, and avoiding confrontation. This shared background had made their alliance natural and peaceful. They understood each other's needs for safety, security, and non-aggression. The great doors at the far end of the hall began to open with a soft hiss of hydraulics. Veltari straightened her robes and prepared her welcoming speech, expecting to see another group of nervous, humble beings seeking protection within the Council's embrace. What walked through those doors changed everything, Captain. Li Dongwook entered first, and immediately every pre-instinct in the room began screaming warnings. He moved like liquid death, each step purposeful and calculated. His shoulders were broad and squared, his posture radiating confidence rather than submission. Behind him came his team, and they moved in perfect coordination. It's like a pack that had hunted together for years. Dr. Kim Sora, their chief scientist, walked with the easy grace of someone who had never known fear of being hunted. Her eyes constantly scanned the room, not in nervous fear like the council delegates, but with the focused attention of something evaluating potential threats and opportunities. Communications Officer Jung Han-sol carried himself with the casual alertness of a predator at rest, while Lieutenant Park Min-ho's military bearings spoke of violence, barely contained beneath a civilized surface. But it was their eyes that truly disturbed the assembled delegates. Every species in the council had eyes positioned on the sides of their heads, evolved for detecting danger from all directions while feeding or fleeing. The humans had forward-facing eyes, closely set and intensely focused. Predator eyes. Hunter eyes. The Fenari delegate, named Pipera, felt her heart rate spike as the humans approached. Her species-enhanced hearing picked up something that chilled her to the bone. The humans' footsteps were completely silent. They moved without sound, the way apex predators stalked through forests. Her great-grandmother had told stories of such creatures, nightmares from the old world that could approach without warning. Ambassador Veltari forced her diplomatic training to override her instincts. "Welcome, friends from Earth," she said, her melodic voice carrying across the hushed chamber. "We gather in the spirit of peace that has bound our council for 3,000 years. Each species that joins us adds to our strength through diversity and mutual protection." Captain Lee smiled, and several delegates unconsciously stepped backward. Human smiles revealed teeth, not the flat, grinding teeth of herbivores, but sharp, pointed incisors designed for tearing flesh. "Thank you for this honor," he replied, his voice carrying undertones that seemed to vibrate through the floor. "We've traveled far to meet our galactic neighbors." Dr. Kim stepped forward, her scientific enthusiasm evident. "We're excited to share knowledge with your community. On Earth, we have a saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Cooperation. has always been humanity's greatest strength. The tension in the room eased slightly. It sounded familiar, almost comforting. Cooperation, community, mutual support. These were concepts the council understood and valued. But then Dr. Kim continued, her tone remaining cheerful and conversational. Of course, that cooperation originally developed for coordinated hunting. Our ancestors could track a woolly mammoth for days across frozen wastelands, working in perfect synchronization to exhaust prey that was 10 times their size before moving in for the kill. The Great Hall fell absolutely silent. You could hear the hum of the life support systems, the distant whisper of the artificial atmosphere recyclers, even the soft rustle of feathers as the Kithara delegates shifted nervously. Ambassador Veltari's ears began twitching, an involuntary stress response. Her species had never been able to evolve away. "Hunting?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lieutenant Park chuckled, the sound somehow both friendly and terrifying. "Humans are persistence predators. We developed the ability to run for hours without stopping, chasing our prey until they literally collapsed from exhaustion. No animal on Earth could outrun us over long distances. We were the marathon killers of our world." He paused, seemingly unaware of the growing horror on the faces around him. "We didn't just hunt herbivores. Either we specialized in hunting other predators, cave lions, dire wolves, saber-toothed cats, giant bears. If it was dangerous, we developed weapons and strategies specifically designed to kill it. We turned predator hunting into an art form." The Fenari delegate Pippara's nose began twitching. So rapidly it became a blur. The scent glands near her whiskers detected the chemical signatures of fear flooding the room. The Althari representative took several unconscious steps backward, his hooved feet clicking nervously on the crystal floor. Even the usually composed Cathara began ruffling their feathers in distress, their wing arms spreading slightly, as if preparing for emergency flight. Communications Officer Junghan Sal, misreading the room's reaction as curiosity added helpfully. "We also formed hunting partnerships with other apex predators. Wolves, for instance. We domesticated them and bred them to be even better hunters, then worked alongside them to track and kill prey." "What other species forms alliances with predators?" Elder Quintal of the Althri made a soft, keening sound deep in his throat, the sound his species made when confronted with inescapable death. His evolutionary programming was screaming that he was surrounded by the most dangerous predators in galactic history. Beings who had not only survived alongside apex predators, but had actively hunted them to extinction. Ambassador Veltari felt, her diplomatic training crumbling under the weight of 3 million years of evolutionary programming. Every instinct her species possessed was telling her to run, to hide, to flee from these apex predators who spoke casually of systematic slaughter. But she was trapped by protocol, by duty, by the hundreds of eyes watching her reaction. "Perhaps," she managed to say, her voice steady, despite the terror racing through her system. "We should continue this discussion after a brief recess. There are many details to consider regarding your integration into the Council." Captain Lee nodded pleasantly. "Of course, we understand that first contact can be overwhelming. We're happy to answer any questions you might have about humanity." The security escorts, keeping a very careful distance, led the human delegation toward temporary quarters. The Great Hall erupted in whispered conversations. Delegates huddled together in their species groups, sharing their horror and disbelief. For 3 millennia, the Galactic Council had operated on a simple principle. All intelligent species were prey species who had transcended their animal origins, to build civilizations based on cooperation and mutual protection. They had created a galaxy-spanning alliance of beings who understood each other because they shared the same evolutionary heritage of survival through avoidance. Now, for the first time in Council history, they faced something completely alien to their experience. A species that didn't run from predators. A species that had never learned to hide or flee or submit. A species that hunted the hunters. The emergency klaxons had been silenced hours ago, but the red warning lights still pulsed throughout the secure levels of Unity's dawn. Out deep beneath, the diplomatic chambers and rooms designed to withstand direct assault from battlecruisers. The Galactic Council's inner circle gathered for the most critical session in their 3,000-year history. Elder Morthok of the Althari couldn't stop pacing. His hooved feet clicked rhythmically against the reinforced metal flooring as he circled the oval conference table like a caged animal. His species had evolved from creatures similar to Earth's deer, and when faced with existential threats, they had only two responses: freeze or flee. Since fleeing wasn't an option, his nervous system was locked in an endless loop of fight-or-flight responses. The massive diplomatic station Unity's dawn floated in the void like a crystal cathode, the center of the chamber. A massive holographic projector displayed the frozen image that had haunted every delegate's dreams the previous night. The scene showed a group of early humans, barely more advanced than primitive cave dwellers, surrounding a massive saber-toothed predator. But these weren't humans running in terror or cowering in fear. They were the hunters. The 300-pound killing machine was their prey. Chief Archivist Nixara of the Kithera stood beside the display. Her usually pristine feathers, still disheveled from hours of stress preening, her bird-like species, had developed some of the galaxy's most advanced information processing abilities, evolved from ancestors who needed to instantly analyze threats from ground and air predators. Now those same analytical skills were processing information that challenged everything they thought they knew about intelligent life. "Let's review what we've learned," she announced, her voice carrying the sharp undertones that indicated extreme agitation in her species. According to humanity's own historical records, their ancestors didn't simply coexist with apex predators. They didn't hide from them or avoid them like every other intelligent species in the galaxy. They hunted them. Holographic display shifted, showing a timeline of human development that looked like something from a nightmare. While other species had developed tools for gathering food, building shelter, or creating art, human tools were designed for one primary purpose: killing things that were bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than themselves. "Look at this progression," Nixara continued, manipulating the display with her wingtip controls. Stone knives designed to cut through thick hides. Spears weighted for maximum penetration. Bow and arrows engineered for precise shots at vital organs. Every innovation was about becoming better killers. Ambassador Valteri studied the data streams flowing across multiple screens. Her enhanced Seleni vision could process information at incredible speeds, but what she was seeing defied comprehension. Their physical adaptations are even more disturbing. Binocular vision evolved specifically for tracking moving prey across long distances. Enhanced depth perception for accurate weapon strikes. Opposable thumbs designed for gripping weapons and tools. The display zoomed in on human anatomy, highlighting features that every council species had previously assumed were simply random evolutionary quirks. But viewed through the lens of predator evolution, they revealed a terrifying pattern. "Endurance capabilities are beyond anything we've recorded," Elder Morthok said, his voice trembling as he read from the data feed. "Humans can run continuously for hours without stopping. Their ancestors would literally chase prey animals until the targets collapsed from exhaustion. They called it persistence hunting, and it was devastatingly effective." Dr. Zeflin of the Fenari, who had been silent until now, spoke up from her position near the emergency exits. Her rabbit-like features were pale with fear, and her large ears were laid flat against her skull. "Surely this is ancient history. Surely they evolved beyond such ... behavior." Chief Archivist Nixara's expression grew even more grim as she accessed more recent data. "I'm afraid not. Even after developing agriculture, cities, and advanced technology, humans continued to hunt apex predators. But here's the truly terrifying part. They started hunting them for sport." The display showed images that made several delegates physically ill. Human hunters posing with massive earth predators, tigers, lions, bears, sharks. Creatures that would send any council species into immediate panic were treated as recreational targets by human civilians. "They developed an entire industry around it," Nixara continued relentlessly. "Safari hunting, big game hunting, deep-sea fishing for apex marine predators. They created weapons of incredible sophistication just to make the killing more efficient."
Albert
Morthok stopped pacing and stared at an image of a human holding a weapon designed to kill creatures from hundreds of meters away. They eliminated their planet's megafauna not from necessity, not from territorial disputes, but simply because they could. When they ran out of worthy prey on land, they invented new technologies to hunt the ocean's apex predators, the chambers. Environmental systems hummed quietly as the full implications of their discovery settled over the assembled delegates. Ambassador Veltari called up another data stream, this one showing human expansion patterns throughout their solar system. "Look at how they spread across their world," she said quietly. "Every other species we've encountered expanded gradually, avoiding dangerous territories until they had sufficient numbers and defensive capabilities. Humans did the opposite. They actively sought out the most dangerous environments and the most deadly predators." The display showed human migration patterns that looked like the advance of an unstoppable plague. They had deliberately moved into territories occupied by apex predators, not to coexist with them, but to eliminate them and claim their hunting grounds. They crossed frozen wastelands to hunt woolly mammoths, Dr. Zeflin read from her data. Pad, her voice barely above a whisper. They entered dense jungles to track down massive predatory cats. They built boats specifically to hunt sea creatures that could swallow them whole. But the most disturbing revelation was yet to come. Chief Archivist Nixara activated a new section of the display that showed humanity's relationship with other predator species on their world. They didn't just hunt apex predators, she announced. They formed hunting partnerships with them. Domesticated wolves, creatures that were themselves pack predators, and selectively bred them to be even more effective killers. The image showed the evolution of dogs from wolves, but viewed through the context of predator enhancement rather than simple domestication. Humans had taken apex predators and modified them to be better hunters, then worked alongside them in coordinated attacks. What species forms alliances with other apex predators? Elder Morthok asked, his voice cracking with stress. What kind of evolutionary path leads to predators cooperating with other predators to hunt more efficiently? Ambassador Veltari stood slowly, her diplomatic training warring with 3 million years of prey species programming. She had spent her entire career managing peaceful first contacts with species who shared the same basic evolutionary heritage. Species who understood concepts like mutual defense, safety in numbers, and conflict avoidance. Their captain mentioned that cooperation was humanity's greatest strength, she said, her voice heavy with implications. We assumed this meant peaceful. Cooperation, like our own species, practice for mutual protection and resource sharing. No, Chief Archivist Nixara replied grimly. They mean hunting cooperation. They turned pack predation into a science. Their entire social structure evolved around coordinated killing. The data showed human military history, and it painted a picture that chilled every delegate to their core. Humans didn't just fight when threatened. They actively sought out conflicts with the most dangerous opponents they could find. Their warriors earned status by facing and defeating apex predators, both animal and eventually other humans. Even their recreational activities involved simulated hunting. Dr. Zeflin observed, reading from cultural analysis reports. Their sports, their games, their entertainment, all based on pursuit, capture, and elimination of targets. Room fell into a silence so complete that the only sounds were the soft hum of life support systems and the nervous breathing of terrified prey species delegates. For the first time in Galactic Council history, they were confronting something completely outside their experience. Every other species in the galaxy had evolved from creatures that survived through hiding, fleeing, defensive posturing, or seeking safety in numbers. Their entire civilization was built on the principle that intelligent beings would naturally choose cooperation over conflict, safety over danger, peace over violence. Humanity represented something that shouldn't exist, according to their understanding of evolution and intelligence. They were apex predators who had not only survived but thrived by actively seeking out and eliminating other apex predators. They were the galaxy's ultimate hunters, and they had just requested membership in a civilization composed entirely of their natural prey. Ambassador. Veltari looked around the room at the faces of her colleagues, representatives of dozens of species who had built the galaxy's greatest peaceful alliance. All of them shared the same terrified question that none of them wanted to voice. "The question before us," she said quietly, her words carrying the weight of their collective fear, "is what happens when the galaxy's ultimate predators look upon a civilization composed entirely of prey species? What do apex predators do when they find themselves surrounded by 3 trillion potential targets?" The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself, carried by quantum communication, arrays that connected thousands of worlds. Within hours of the Council's emergency session, every major population center from the core worlds to the Outer Rim territories knew the terrifying truth. Apex predators had achieved spaceflight and were seeking membership in galactic civilization. On Fenari Prime, the rabbit-like inhabitants watched their leaders deliver emergency broadcasts with growing horror. Chancellor Hapara stood before the planetary assembly, her normally calm demeanor shattered by panic. "Citizens of the collective," she announced, her voice trembling, "we face an unprecedented threat to our survival. A species of apex predators has emerged from the death world called Earth. They are not like us. They do not seek safety in numbers or peace through cooperation. They hunt." The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Across Fenari space, families began packing essential belongings and fleeing toward the galaxy's center. As far from human space as possible, the Fenari Collective's leadership issued emergency evacuation orders for all border colonies. Convinced that humanity would inevitably expand through conquest like the ancient predators of their homeworlds. Darkest legends, space traffic control. Centers were overwhelmed as millions of civilian vessels launched simultaneously, creating the largest refugee crisis in galactic history. Families who had lived on frontier worlds for generations abandoned their homes, taking only what they could carry in their desperate flight from the approaching human menace. On the water world of Althari, the deer-like Senate convened an emergency session. Senator Velanoth paced before the assembly, his hooves clicking nervously on the polished stone floor. "We cannot wait for these predators to reveal their true nature," he declared to thunderous approval. "History teaches us that apex predators expand until they consume all available prey. We are their prey." The Althari military, built entirely around defensive strategies and evacuation protocols, found themselves facing an impossible challenge. How do you fight an enemy that has evolved specifically to hunt and kill? Their greatest admirals studied human tactical doctrine and came away terrified. Human warfare wasn't about territorial defense or resource protection. It was about systematic elimination of threats through overwhelming force and persistence. General Morville addressed the Senate's Defense Committee with barely controlled panic. Their military history is one continuous record of seeking out the most dangerous opponents and defeating them through superior tactics and weaponry. They don't fight to survive, they fight to eliminate threats permanently. Meanwhile, in the vast migration corridors of space, the bird-like Cathara abandoned their traditional seasonal routes. For thousands of years, their great flocks had followed predictable patterns between star systems. But now they fled in random directions to avoid any area where human ships might appear. Their leaders issued desperate warnings: do not approach any system where the apex predators have been detected. Change course immediately if human vessels are spotted. The Soul's Pride became the most feared ship in galactic space, not because of its weapons or size, but simply because it carried humans. Captain Lee Dongwook found his vessel treated like a plague ship wherever they attempted to dock. Space stations that had welcomed thousands of species for centuries suddenly implemented emergency quarantine protocols. At Sigma Station, one of the galaxy's largest trading hubs, Station Commander Quilinara watched her security feeds with growing unease. The human ship had requested basic resupply and maintenance services, routine requests that were normally approved automatically. But now her security teams surrounded the docking bay like they were containing a biological weapon. "There, just sitting there," reported Security Chief Exelon, his Cathara features ruffled with stress. "The humans haven't made any aggressive moves, but my people are terrified. Some of the junior officers have requested transfers rather than work near apex predators." The situation became even more tense when the humans actually left their ship. Lieutenant Park Min-ho, attempting to visit the station's cultural center to learn about galactic civilization, found himself facing a reception unlike anything in Council history. As he walked through the corridors, civilian populations fled before him like he was a natural disaster given human form. Shop owners slammed security barriers down across their storefronts. Families grabbed their children and ran for emergency evacuation points. Even the station's security personnel followed him at a distance, their hands hovering nervously over their weapon controls, ready to sound general alarms at the first sign of predatory behavior. When Lieutenant Park entered the cultural center, the AL-3 docent on duty took one look at his forward-facing eyes and predator's posture and immediately triggered the emergency evacuation protocol. Alarms blared throughout the facility as hundreds of visitors stampeded toward the exits, their prey species instincts completely overriding rational thought. Dr. Kim. Sora found the situation equally frustrating during her attempts at scientific collaboration. She had requested access to the station's xenobiology laboratories, hoping to establish research partnerships with Council scientists. Instead, she found herself speaking to empty rooms via remote communication links, as no alien scientist was willing to be in the same space as an apex predator. "This is insane," she told Captain Lee during an emergency crew meeting aboard the Soul's Pride. "I tried to explain that modern humans are primarily omnivorous, that we've moved beyond primitive hunting behaviors. I showed them our agricultural systems, our synthetic food production, our conservation efforts. They won't listen to any of it." Captain Lee stared out the viewport at the dozens of security vessels maintaining a defensive perimeter around their ship. Each alien vessel bristled with weapons, ready to open fire at the first sign of human aggression. Fear doesn't listen to logic. Doctor, to them, we're not fellow sapient beings seeking peaceful contact. We're the ultimate nightmare their species has spent millions of years evolving to avoid. The situation reached a critical breaking point when Admiral Keshin of the Finari Collective called for an emergency session of the full Galactic Council. The ancient assembly hall, which had seen 3 millennia of peaceful negotiations and diplomatic solutions, now resembled a war council, preparing for extinction-level threats. "Fellow beings," Admiral Keshin declared, his voice carrying across the chamber through translation systems, "we face a crisis that threatens the very foundation of our civilization. These humans represent everything our ancestors fled from. In the dark ages of our worlds, they are apex predators who have achieved spaceflight, and they seek entry into our alliance." The Admiral's proposal sent shockwaves through the assembly. "I call for the immediate implementation of the containment protocol. Confine humanity to their home system. Establish a quarantine barrier around Earth and its colonies. We cannot allow apex predators to roam freely among prey species populations." Support for the proposal grew rapidly as delegate after delegate rose to voice their terror. The AL-3 delegation argued that humanity's predatory nature made coexistence fundamentally impossible. Elder Morthok, his voice heavy with the weight of species memory, delivered what many considered the most compelling argument. "A wolf may claim to be domesticated," he stated, his words resonating through the chamber, "but genetic programming cannot be denied. These humans have the capacity to hunt and kill every species in this chamber. That capacity will eventually become action. It is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when." The debate became increasingly heated as fear overcame diplomatic protocol. Delegates who had spent careers finding peaceful solutions to interspecies conflicts now found themselves advocating for what amounted to the imprisonment of an entire species based solely on their evolutionary heritage. However, not all council members agreed with the growing hysteria. Counselor Wixana of the Selenai, known for her careful analysis and philosophical approach to complex problems, rose to address the assembly. Her words cut through the panic like a blade of reason. "Esteemed colleagues," she began, her melodic voice somehow carrying above the chaos, "we stand at a crossroads that will define the very soul of our council. We judge these humans by their evolutionary past, yet our own founding principles declare that all sapient beings have the right to grow beyond their origins. She paused, allowing her words to sink in. If we abandon these principles out of fear, if we cage an entire species based on their ancestry rather than their actions, what separates us from the mindless predators our own ancestors fled? Do we become the very thing we claim to fear? Chamber fell silent as delegates wrestled with the fundamental question that would determine humanity's fate. Fear and reason battled in the council chambers, while somewhere in the darkness of space, the crew of the Soul's Pride waited to learn whether they would be welcomed as equals or caged as threats. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for a decision. That would change the course of civilization forever. The warning came through quantum channels at 0300 Galactic Standard Time, when most of the Council territories were in their sleep cycles. Emergency beacons from the Outer Rim screamed across the void, carrying messages of horror that would change everything. Mayday, Mayday. This is Colony 7 in the Kepler Expanse. We're under attack by unknown machines. They're consuming everything. Oh, gods, they're breaking through the barriers. Please someone help! The transmission cut to static. Within hours, similar distress calls flooded in from across the Outer Rim. But these weren't pirates or raiders or even hostile aliens. The surveillance footage that managed to reach Council space showed something far worse. Massive mechanical entities that moved like living predators, but possessed the cold efficiency of machines. They called themselves the Harvesters. And their message to the galaxy was simple and terrifying. All organic matter will be processed. Resistance is futile. We are hunger incarnate. Admiral Keshin of the Fenari Collective found himself commanding the largest military mobilization in Council history. Ships from dozens of species converged on the Outer Rim, carrying the combined defensive might of 3,000 years of peaceful civilization. But as the first battle reports came in, it became clear that they were facing something unprecedented. The Harvesters weren't just machines. They were perfect predator machines, engineered by some long-dead civilization to be the ultimate hunters. Each unit was the size of a battlecruiser, but moved with the fluid grace of a stalking cat. Their hulls were covered in sensor arrays that could track individual life signs across light years. Their weapons systems adapted in real time to whatever defensive strategies they encountered. They're learning from every engagement, reported Captain Quintal of the AL-3 Defense Force, his voice shaking as he transmitted from the bridge of his heavily damaged vessel. We tried standard evasion patterns, and they predicted our movements. We attempted defensive formations, and they concentrated fire on our weak points. It's like they know how prey species think. The first major battle took place at the Severa system, home to 12 billion Cathero civilians. The Council fleet, composed of nearly 1,000 vessels, deployed in their traditional defensive formation, overlapping shields, protected escape routes, in careful positioning to minimize casualties while maximizing defensive fire. The Harvesters tore through them like paper. The mechanical predators moved in perfect coordination. Their attacks focused on disrupting every defensive strategy the Council forces employed. When the prey species ships tried to hide behind asteroid fields, the Harvesters' sensors pierced every shadow. When they attempted to flee to hyperspace, the machine's superior speed allowed them to intercept and destroy the fleeing vessels. When they formed defensive clusters for mutual protection, the Harvesters simply overwhelmed them with devastating firepower from multiple angles. 3 entire star systems fell in the first week. Billions of civilians evacuated deeper into Council space, while their military escorts fought desperate rearguard actions against an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. Our traditional strategies are completely useless, Admiral Keshin admitted during an emergency war council aboard the Fortress Station's Shield of Peace. His rabbit-like features were haggard with exhaustion and terror. These machines don't just think like perfect predators. They were designed specifically to hunt prey species. Every instinct we possess, every defensive strategy we've developed, plays directly into their programming. The holographic display showed the advancing Harvester swarm like a plague spreading across the galaxy. Red zones marked systems that had gone silent, while orange areas indicated territories under immediate threat. The pattern was terrifyingly clear. The machines were systematically consuming everything in their path, growing stronger with each victory. General Morval of the Althary tried to maintain optimism. Perhaps we can adapt our tactics, develop new defensive strategies they haven't encountered before. With what? Demanded Captain Vexilin of the Cathera. We've thrown everything we have at them. Our best pilots, our most advanced ships, our most sophisticated defensive technologies. They counter every move we make because they were built to hunt creatures exactly like us. It was then that Captain Lee Dong-wook stepped forward from his position at the back of the chamber. The human had been observing the tactical discussions in silence, his predator eyes analyzing the data with an intensity that made the alien commanders nervous even in their darkest hour. "Let humanity help," he said simply. "We think differently than prey species. We might see solutions you cannot." The chamber fell silent. Elder Morthoak of the Althary was the first to respond, his voice heavy with centuries of prey species conditioning. "Absolutely not. We won't arm potential predators during our darkest hour. How do we know you won't simply join forces with these machines to hunt us more efficiently?" Captain Lee's expression remained calm, despite the accusation. "Because predators don't hunt other predators for fun. We hunt them because they're threats that need to be eliminated." But the Council's fear of humanity ran too deep, even facing extinction. Many delegates preferred to risk annihilation rather than trust apex predators with weapons and tactical information. The debate raged for hours while the Harvester swarm continued its inexorable advance toward the core worlds. Then came the news that changed everything. The mechanical predators had reached the Selenai home system, threatening 40 billion civilians who had nowhere left to run. The Harvesters had cornered the galaxy's greatest concentration of prey species, and the Council's remaining military forces were too battered and demoralized to mount an effective defense. Admiral Siksion stared at the tactical display showing Harvester forces surrounding the Selenai homeworld like a pack of mechanical wolves circling their final prey. Desperation finally outweighed fear. "One chance," he said grimly, turning to face Captain Lee. "Prove that predators can be trusted, or we'll face the Harvesters alone and accept whatever fate awaits us." Captain Lee nodded and activated his communication system. "This is Captain Lee Dong-wook to all human vessels in Council space. Form. Up on my position, we're going hunting." Within hours, humanity's small expeditionary force had assembled into what they designated Apex Squadron. 12 human vessels against a mechanical swarm that had crushed fleets 100 times larger. The odds seemed impossible. But Captain Lee's first tactical briefing revealed why humanity might succeed where others had failed. "The Harvesters hunt like pack predators," Lieutenant Park Minho explained to the mixed human-alien command staff. "They expect prey, behavior, fear, flight, defensive clustering, attempts to hide or escape. Their programming is optimized. To counter every strategy, prey species have developed over millions of years of evolution." Dr. Kim Sora, monitoring from the science vessel Discovery, added crucial insight. "But their artificial intelligence has a fundamental flaw. It assumes all organic life will behave like prey when threatened. We're going to give them something they're not programmed to handle: counter-predation." The human fleet employed tactics that baffled both the Harvesters and their alien allies. When damaged Harvester units retreated to repair facilities, human ships followed them across multiple star systems, pressing attacks even when outnumbered 10 to 1. They used sacrifice plays that seemed insane to pre-species minds, deliberately exposing smaller vessels to enemy fire to draw Harvester forces into carefully prepared kill zones where heavier human warships waited in ambush. The first engagement took place near the gas giant Tethys Prime. A squadron of Harvester scouts detected the human vessels and moved to intercept, expecting the standard prey species response of evasion or defensive positioning. Instead, the humans charged directly at them. All ships. Attack Formation Delta. Captain Lee commanded as his vessel's soul's pride led the charge into the heart of the mechanical swarm. "Remember, we're not trying to survive this engagement, we're trying to eliminate the enemy." The battle was unlike anything seen in galactic warfare. Human ships ignored their own safety. ramming damaged harvester units and using their own vessels as weapons when conventional firepower proved insufficient. They fought with the desperate fury of cornered predators, but with the tactical precision of apex hunters who had evolved to kill things more dangerous than themselves. For the first time since the crisis began, harvester forces started retreating. The mechanical predators, artificial intelligence, programmed to hunt prey species couldn't process opponents who became more dangerous when cornered. Their tactical algorithms failed when faced with enemies who treated warfare not as survival, but as systematic elimination of threats. Dr. Kim made the crucial discovery while analyzing wreckage from destroyed harvester units. Their AI assumes all targets will eventually flee when faced with overwhelming force. It's not programmed to handle prey that becomes predator. When we stopped running and started hunting them, their decision trees began failing catastrophically. The tide of war began to shift as human tactical doctrine proved uniquely effective against machines designed to hunt prey species. The galaxy's apex predators had found worthy opponents and were systematically dismantling them with the same relentless efficiency their ancestors had used to eliminate Earth's megafauna. The Void Nebula stretched across space like a cosmic graveyard, its dark clouds hiding secrets that had remained buried for millions of years. Deep within its swirling depths, something ancient and terrible had awakened. The Harvester Source facility hung in the darkness like a mechanical planet, its surface covered with thousands of production lines that never stopped building new. Hunter-Yuns. Captain Lee Dongwook stood on the bridge of the Soul's Pride, studying the massive structure through the view screen. Around him, the largest fleet in galactic history had assembled for what everyone knew would be the final battle. Ships from dozens of species formed a defensive perimeter around the nebula, their crews preparing for what might be their last fight. The facility was enormous beyond comprehension. Scanning reports showed it was over 1,000 kilometers in diameter. Its core protected by layer upon layer of automated defenses and thousands of active harvester units. Every few minutes, new mechanical predators emerged from construction bays, adding to the swarm that already outnumbered the Allied fleet by 20 to 1. Admiral Keshen's voice crackled through the communication system. Heavy with the weight of command, all fleet commanders, this is it. Intelligence confirms that the central AI controlling the entire harvester network is located deep within that facility. If we can destroy it, the mechanical swarm across the galaxy will shut down. Tactical display showed what they were up against. The harvesters had concentrated their entire remaining force around their source facility, creating defensive formations that would make any direct assault catastrophically expensive. Layers of mechanical sentries patrolled the outer perimeter, while heavy combat units formed kill zones around every possible approach route. Direct assault is suicide, Admiral Keshen declared as the fleet commanders reviewed their options. The harvesters have had weeks to prepare these defenses. They know we're coming, and they've positioned their forces to counter every conventional attack strategy we might employ. Captain Lee studied the enemy formations with the focused intensity of a predator analyzing its prey. While the alien commanders saw an impregnable fortress, his apex predator mind recognized something different. A prey animal that had cornered itself to protect its most vital organs. Not suicide, he said quietly, his voice cutting through the tactical chatter. A hunt. We'll use pack coordination on a galactic scale. The plan he outlined seemed impossible to prey species' minds. Instead of seeking safety in defensive formations or attempting to find weak points in the enemy's armor, Apex Squadron would spearhead a direct assault on the facility's heart. The 12 human vessels would act as pursuit predators, driving the harvester defensive forces away from their protected positions and into carefully prepared kill zones where the Allied prey species fleets could use their superior defensive capabilities. Elder Morthok of the Althari, his voice trembling with generations of prey species conditioning, spoke the fear that every alien commander felt. You're asking us to trust apex predators with our lives. How do we know this isn't some elaborate hunting strategy where we become the prey? Captain Lee turned to face the assembled fleet commanders, its forward-facing eyes meeting each of their gazes with calm certainty. No, Elder Morthok. I'm asking you to trust that predators evolved to hunt the things that hunt you. We're not your enemies. We're the answer to the problem you've faced for millions of years. The battle began at dawn, Galactic Standard Time. Apex Squadron broke formation and charged directly at the Harvester facility. Their ships moving with the coordinated precision of a wolf pack isolating a target from the herd. Every prey species instinct screamed that this was madness, but the humans had a different understanding of warfare. Lieutenant Park Min-ho, commanding the destroyer Inchen, led the first wave of attacks. His ship dove straight into the heart of the enemy defensive grid, weapons blazing as mechanical predators swarmed to intercept him. But instead of trying to fight his way out, he did something the harvesters couldn't predict. He kept going deeper. Squadrons implement dispersal pattern Alpha, Captain Lee commanded as his own vessel followed Park's lead. Remember, we're not trying to win a conventional battle. We're herding the prey into position. The human ships spread out through the harvester defensive formations like hunters driving game toward waiting allies. They ignored the massive firepower being directed at them, accepting devastating damage to their own vessels. While systematically disrupting the mechanical predators' carefully prepared positions, the harvesters, programmed to expect prey species, behavior found their tactical algorithms failing as the humans refused to retreat or seek defensive positions. Instead of fleeing when damaged, human ships pressed their attacks even more aggressively. Instead of protecting their wounded vessels, they used them as bait to draw more mechanical predators out of position. Now Captain Lee shouted as the harvester defensive line began to fracture. All Allied fleets execute defensive strikes. The prey species ships, positioned at carefully calculated defensive points throughout the battle zone, opened fire on the exposed mechanical predators. Their weapons, designed for defensive operations rather than aggressive hunting, proved devastatingly effective against enemies who had been driven out of their protective formations. The combination was like nothing seen in galactic warfare. Human aggression and alien defensive expertise complemented each other perfectly, creating a tactical synthesis that neither could achieve alone. The humans' willingness to sacrifice themselves for strategic advantage gave the prey species fleets opportunities they could never have created on their own. As the outer defenses crumbled, Dr. Kim Sora piloted her science vessel Discovery through the chaos toward the facility's core. Her mission was the most dangerous of all: penetrate the central command structure and somehow disabled the AI that controlled the entire harvester network. The facility's interior was a nightmare of mechanical precision. The production lines stretched in every direction, churning out new hunter units with terrifying efficiency. At the center of it all, suspended in a sphere of pure energy, hung the harvester's central intelligence. A massive artificial brain that had spent eons perfecting the art of hunting organic life. So the AI spoke as Dr. Kim approached, its voice resonating through the facility speakers. The apex predators have finally arrived. I have studied your species extensively. You're efficient killers. I will grant you that. Dr. Kim smiled as she began connecting her equipment to the AI's core systems. You've studied us, but you don't understand us. You think like a predator, which means you can only see other life forms as either prey to be hunted or competition to be eliminated. Her fingers flew over the control interfaces, her predator-descended mind thinking in patterns that the mechanical intelligence couldn't anticipate. Where prey species scientists had tried to shut down the AI through logical arguments or defensive programming, she approached the problem like a hunter facing another apex predator. You hunt prey, she told the AI as she worked to reprogram its core systems. But we hunt predators, the thing your creators never imagined when they built you. We're not prey that learn to fight back. We're apex predators who evolved specifically to eliminate threats like you. The AI's responses became increasingly erratic as Dr. Kim's programming took hold. Her predator logic succeeded where prey species reasoning had failed, turning the harvester production systems against their own network. The mechanical swarm began consuming itself in recursive hunting loops, as units designed to hunt prey instead turned on each other in an endless cycle of predation. Across the galaxy, harvester units suddenly stopped their attacks and began fighting amongst themselves. The mechanical nightmare that had threatened to consume all organic life collapsed under the weight of its own predatory programming, twisted into knots by a mind that understood predation better than its creators ever had. As the last harvester facility went dark and silence fell across the communication networks, the galaxy breathed a collective sigh of relief. The crisis was over, but its resolution had fundamentally changed how the Council viewed humanity. Ambassador Veltari stood before the post-war assembly, her voice carrying new understanding and respect. Fellow beings, we have learned something profound about the nature of civilization itself. We feared humanity because they evolved as predators, but we failed to comprehend that evolution created them to protect prey species from other predators. She gestured toward the human delegation, no longer seeing monsters, but guardians. For 3 millennia, our council believed that civilization meant evolving beyond predation. We built our alliance on the principle that intelligent beings would naturally choose cooperation over conflict. But we were incomplete. We had herbivores, omnivores, and defensive specialists, but no apex guardians to protect us from the predators that still lurked in the darkness. The Council established the Human Protection Protocols that day, officially recognizing humanity's role as the galaxy's apex defenders. Human crewed ships took positions as roving guardians throughout Council space, their predatory instincts finally finding their proper purpose, not as threats to peaceful civilization, but as its ultimate protectors. Captain Lee Dongwook accepted the formal commission as apex guardian of the Galactic Council, speaking for all humanity when he made their promise to the galaxy. We are predators, but we choose to be protectors. We evolved to hunt the hunters, to eliminate the threats that prey species cannot face alone. The galaxy is our territory now, and we will defend it. The ceremony concluded with a moment of silence for all those lost in the Harvester War, followed by a declaration that would echo through galactic history. Humanity had found their place in the universe, not despite their predatory heritage, but because of it. They were the wolves that guarded the sheep, the hunters that hunted the hunters, the apex predators that chose to be guardians. For the first time in 3,000 years, the galaxy was truly complete. Prey and predator, working together to build a civilization that could face any threat. The ancient fear that had driven species apart was finally replaced by understanding sometimes. To protect the innocent, you need those who were born to hunt. The end.